Soon as I come through, I let that chopper off. Pow! Pow! That's not a chopper sound. I'm sorry. Soon as I come through, I kill everybody. We killing one person. No, we kill everybody. When I'm in the club, I make it rain. I'm gonna pick that. No, we not.
This is the story of Markeita McCleary, a mother, a wife, and a businesswoman. Her life was filled with dreams and hard work. But everything came to a sudden and tragic end when her own husband, Ashton Neroes, took it all away. What happened on that fateful night will leave you shocked and heartbroken. Markeita had built a life full of love and ambition, but her marriage to Ashton began to crumble. After discovering his affair, she made the brave decision to file for divorce. But Ashton's response to the news was far more deadly than anyone could have imagined. This is the story of how Markeita's life was tragically cut short by the man she trusted most. Markeita McCleary was just 28 years old, but in her short life, she had already accomplished so much. Born on December 13, 1991, in Dallas, Texas, Markeita was the type of person who put her heart into everything she did. As a mother of 3, her children were the center of her world. She loved them deeply and worked hard every day to give them the best life possible. Her passion wasn't just for her family. Markeita was also driven by a desire to succeed in business. She was the founder of a company called Everything That Glitters, a business dedicated to selling high-quality hair and beauty products. Through this, she not only supported her own family, but also empowered other women to feel confident and independent. She had a natural ability to connect with people, always making time to help others. Markeita's work wasn't just about selling products, it was about inspiring women to embrace their own beauty and strength. She was proud of what she built and the community she created through her business. Outside of work, Markeita was known for being kind, warm, and always full of love for her children. Whether it was helping with schoolwork, celebrating milestones, or simply spending time together, she cherished every moment with her kids. She was the kind of mother who made her children feel safe, loved, and cared for. Her friends and family remember Markeita as someone who was always positive and focused on her goals. She wasn't just a businesswoman, she was a strong, loving person who wanted to make a difference in the world, especially for her children. Markeita's life, though full of potential and promise, was cut short by a tragic event that no one could have predicted. But before the darkness arrived, Markeita had dreams, a family she adored, and a business that was making a real impact on people's lives. Ashton Neroes was Markeita's husband, but he was also known for something else. He had a presence online, where he shared posts about fatherhood, religion, and family life. Ashton built an image of being a devoted husband and father, someone who cared deeply for his family and faith. His social media accounts were filled with pictures of his children and messages about being a good man, a good father, and a good husband. He ran a YouTube channel where he often shared motivational content. His followers saw him as a role model, a man who seemed to have it all together. To the outside world, Ashton looked like the perfect family man, living a happy life with his wife and 3 children. But the reality behind closed doors was far different. While Ashton portrayed himself as a loving husband and father to his online audience, things at home were not as they seemed. Markeita and Ashton's marriage had been facing serious problems for years. The relationship had begun to deteriorate, and what once started with love slowly turned into a cycle of arguments, betrayal, and emotional pain. Friends and family saw a different side of Ashton than what he showed to the world. Those close to Markeita knew about the struggles in their marriage. They saw Ashton's controlling behavior, and they watched as Markeita became more and more unhappy. She confided in those closest to her, revealing that she no longer felt safe or loved in the marriage. Despite all of this, Ashton continued to present himself online as the ideal family man. It was clear that the public image he worked so hard to create was far removed from the reality of what Markeita was going through behind the scenes. Markeita and Ashton had been married for 5 years. At first, their relationship was filled with hope and promise. But over time, things began to change. Ashton's behavior became more controlling, and the trust between them slowly began to fade. The breaking point came when Markeita discovered that Ashton had been having an affair. This was the moment that shattered the foundation of their marriage. The pain of betrayal was too much for Markeita to handle, and it pushed her to take a step that many people would never have imagined. She made the decision to file for divorce. But things didn't stop there. Ashton's reaction to the divorce papers was not one of regret or remorse. Instead, he became more angry and controlling. The relationship had gone from bad to worse, and Markeita felt like she was losing control of the situation. During one heated argument, Ashton became so angry that he pulled out a firearm. Fearing for her safety, Markeita made the difficult decision to hide the weapon. She knew the danger she was in. Her fears were not just in her mind, they were real. Markeita's friends and family saw what was happening. They knew that she was trying her best to protect herself and her children from Ashton's unpredictable behavior. They knew how much she loved her kids and how hard she fought to keep them safe, but even they could see that the situation was becoming dangerous. Narrator voiceover, on October 18, 2020, everything reached a tragic and violent climax. Markeita and Ashton had a fierce argument that night. Their young son, just in the next room, heard the shouting and could never forget what happened next. Suddenly, the sounds of a struggle were replaced by something far worse, the sound of gunshots. Markeita's screams filled the air as the shots rang out. She was shot multiple times, with the bullets aimed at her upper torso and abdomen, making it clear she had no chance to escape or fight back. Her son, terrified and unable to comprehend the horror he had just witnessed, ran out of the apartment in search of help. In his panic, he stumbled across neighbors, desperate to find someone who could stop the nightmare. Neighbors who spoke to police described the boy as hysterical, his face filled with shock and fear. He had seen something no child should ever see. The trauma of that moment stayed with him, leaving an indelible mark on his young life. As the situation unfolded, the horror of what had just happened began to sink in, not just for the boy, but for everyone who would later hear the details of that night. After taking his wife's life in cold blood, Ashton showed no signs of regret. There were no tears, no remorse, no sign of guilt. Instead, he walked calmly out of the apartment, as if nothing had happened. It was as though he was unfazed by the horror he had just committed. In a chilling turn of events, Ashton didn't stay at the scene. Instead, he took his young son, who had witnessed the brutal act, and drove him to Markeita's parents' house. The child, confused and terrified, didn't know what to make of the situation. He was left standing at the doorstep, barefoot and shirtless, with nothing but the weight of the tragedy hanging over him. Ashton's actions were unsettling, to say the least. Instead of trying to explain what had happened or seeking help, he simply left his son at the door and drove away. It was as though he was moving on from the act as if it was nothing more than a minor inconvenience. Meanwhile, Markeita's father and sister were in shock when they received the first notifications about Markeita's death. Their hearts dropped as the reality of what had happened began to sink in. They couldn't understand how Ashton, someone who had seemed so calm and collected, could have committed such an unforgivable act. It wasn't until later that night, when the details of the crime began to surface, that the full extent of the tragedy became clear. Markeita's family members were left to cope with the shock of losing her, as well as the horror of knowing that the person who took her life was someone they had once trusted. In the moments after the murder, Ashton's lack of emotion and his cold behavior only made the situation more disturbing. The people who knew him, the people who once saw him as a loving father and husband, were left trying to understand the man who had just shattered so many lives. As the investigation into Markeita's death unfolded, disturbing details began to surface. It was revealed that Ashton had purchased the weapon used in the murder just weeks before the crime. This raised serious questions about his intentions, showing that the act was not a spur-of-the-moment decision but something he had planned. Further evidence uncovered from the crime scene pointed to premeditation. The way Markeita had been shot, with no signs of a struggle, made it clear that this wasn't an accident. Ashton's actions before and after the murder also painted a chilling picture of his mindset. In addition to the evidence at the scene, Ashton's social media posts raised red flags. Just days before the murder, he shared posts about feeling troubled and uncertain. These posts, while not directly linked to the crime, hinted at the inner conflict he was experiencing, showing a man struggling with something far deeper than he had let on. After being taken into custody, Ashton calmly confessed to the police. His lack of emotion during the confession only added to the chilling nature of the crime. He didn't try to run or hide from what he had done. Instead, he admitted to the murder without any clear sense of remorse. In court, Ashton pleaded not guilty, claiming the shooting had been an accident. He described the events in a disjointed way, saying he hadn't meant to kill Markeita. But the prosecution quickly dismantled this claim. The evidence against him was overwhelming, leaving little doubt about his guilt. Narrator voiceover: the court heard about Ashton's affair, the purchase of the murder weapon, and the way he had acted after the shooting. All of this painted a picture of a man who had carefully planned and executed his wife's murder. His defense didn't hold up, and the jury returned a guilty verdict. Ashton was sentenced to 50 years in prison for the murder of his wife. His appeal was later denied, and the case was closed. Markeita's family, though heartbroken, found some comfort in knowing that justice had been served. But even with Ashton behind bars, the pain left behind by his actions could never be fully erased. Markeita's children would grow up without their mother, and her family would continue to carry the weight of her loss. Markeita's death left an immense hole in the lives of her family, especially her 3 children. They now faced the difficult task of growing up without their mother, a woman who was loving, caring, and dedicated to giving them the best life possible. Family, friends, and even those who knew her from afar will never forget the life she had built and the dreams she had for her children. But they are left to carry on without her, forever affected by the tragedy of that night. This story serves as a reminder that domestic violence can happen to anyone, even when everything seems fine on the surface. No one expects to see such a brutal end to what appeared to be a family full of love. It also shows us that justice, though it may be slow, can be served, even in the most painful and shocking circumstances. If you found this story impactful, kindly share it with others. Raising awareness about domestic violence is important, and together, we can make sure more people understand its impact. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories like this. You for watching, and see you in the next video.